So I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm gonna try and pronounce it and correct me if I do it wrong. Monty Nero, is that okay?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Your name is quite unique. Are you from Scotland? Would you say you're originally from Scotland?
No, I've been living here since 2006,
Mhm.
and my wife's Scottish and my daughter's Scottish. She's born in Scotland. Yeah, we just really like it here. Really enjoy the life here.
Do you enjoy the weather as well? Would you say you're a big fan of the Scottish weather?
Yeah, well, Dundee's a very sunny city. It's the sunniest city in Scotland.
Mhm.
So get less rain than you get in Glasgow for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and I like sun. I don't like it hot, which is handy because it's not
Yeah.
hot in Dundee.
Mhm.
But it's definitely sunny. So I do like weather like that.
Yeah, I was definitely the other weekend for the Comic Con, and I was like, I need to come here more often, because you feel like you're close to the water, the ocean, you can feel the breeze, and it wasn't
Yeah,
like sunny when I came, but it felt good, the air and everything.
yeah. That's what I really like about living here is I've got a house that overlooks the water. So a lot of people in Dundee have because obviously the whole city's built on like the side of a volcano and then sprawls on down towards the beach and the castle at Broughty Ferry.
Hmm.
So a lot of people have those kind of sort of houses, and it's just a really nice. Yeah, like I say, the air's fresh, and you can go for nice runs along the water and stuff like that. So I really enjoy it. I really like it. Yeah.
It's perfect for a creative like yourself. You get in the out there for a walk, get some fresh air and come back and go back to what you do. And it must be good for you.
That's so important. It really is important. Not just practically. If I don't go running sort of every couple of days, you know what it's like when you're making comics or you're doing something creative. You sit down for long periods, and
Yeah.
um, like your back. I had a lot of trouble with my back when I was younger.
Hmm.
Uh, so from that point of view, it means I can carry on working long hours that I need to because I'm sort of up and down the coast quite a lot, walking or running or cycling with my daughter. And then also like you definitely get ideas when you're running or walking or when you're in the shower or doing the washing up, whatever it is. It's definitely a really good way of solving creative problems. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've done
Yeah,
that.
definitely same as well. When I sometimes I can feel stuck, and when I go for a walk for an hour, I
Yeah.
get the idea right there. And when you're in the studio and it's too warm and you've been sitting for too long, you can feel stuck. And I think nature just helps us in a way. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's quite interesting.
Well, I looked into it because I definitely knew it was a thing because I kept happening. So I looked into it and I actually included it as one of the kind of themes in my death sentence comic. So death sentence is about how creativity can make you more powerful. It's one of the themes of the book. Um, so what I found out through research was what happens. The reason why you get these new ideas when you're doing something like walking or running is because your brain is actually partially taken up with an activity that it's concentrating on.
Mhm.
So it might be running down a path and not crashing into anybody and looking at the view, and you've got all these sensations that are hitting you, new sensations from like the wind and the sort of smells and the views and stuff. So what happens is that takes up like a certain portion of your brain,
Mhm.
and it means that in order for other parts of your brain to kind of function, they have to take the synapses in your brain, they have to take a slightly different path.
Mhm.
So that means that you get a different kind of idea when you're doing an automatic task. Like it
Mhm.
might be driving, it might be in the shower, it might be walking or riding a bike. So you're definitely concentrating on what you're doing, but also you've got lots of free time
Mhm.
elsewhere in your brain for like thinking about something. And often I'll get an idea and I'm not even thinking about it. It'll just pop into my head
Yeah.
while I'm running. And it's because, like I say, when you're sitting at your desk and you're just thinking about the one thing, you're kind of thinking about it in all kinds of different ways, trying to solve the problem. But the synapses are sort of joining together and firing in sort of the same sort of ways. When you're doing another task, the synapses have to fire in a slightly different way. So it make new connections in your brain, and that's how you get an original idea. So that's why I've actually, I mean, I used to just do it like you said, you just do it because it sort of seems to help. But now it's actually just part of my process. I just know it's going to happen, and I kind of schedule it in almost.
It's kind of like, I think you've explained it well. Maybe the way I've understood it, it's like your brain is using these nerves to sort of process this information for too long. And maybe you've been going in a straight line. There's a lot of barriers. And when you take a walk outside in nature, maybe your brain sort of takes other nerves around the barrier and you're able to sort of navigate through whatever blockage that was stopping you to get these ideas. And then along the way, your brain opens up to new ideas. It's quite interesting, like how we're
Yeah,
sort of connected to nature. It's amazing.
exactly. Because a thought and a memory, they're both just synapses, different firing. It's quite interesting as well when you like recently I met some people that I hadn't seen since I was at primary school, like when I was about 7, and started talking, and they started talking about things, and they set off some memories in my head of things that I literally hadn't thought about for 40 years. And if you told me, I would have said I had no recollection of them. So, but because they'd sort of sparked something in me, I suddenly got all these kind of memories that I hadn't literally had for 40 years, and they all came flooding back. So it was all to do with a trip we took to Holland with the primary school, and all those memories were in my head somewhere, and it was just a matter of the synapses being sort of fired to sort of like, bring them back into my consciousness. So yeah, I find the way the brain actually works very, very interesting, and it's one of the, I mean, there's a lot of research in it if you look online and in sort of scientific journals and stuff, but really scientists and any kind of researchers, they know very little about the specifics of it, and it's all just still a very, very sort of hazy area. But it's very
I was visiting my friends in Sweden, who are some musicians I work with for my music soundtracks for my comic books, and we're halfway through a session in the studio, and we're so tired, we're not getting ideas. And this guy, he's like, Etian, you should get into the car. I want to take you somewhere. I'm like, what do you mean? We're in the middle of something. He's like, don't worry about it, just come. I'm like, okay, I was new in Gothenburg, so I was excited. Then we go to the sea, and I see a bunch of people coming out of water having cold showers. And I'm like, what's going on here? He's like, today you're gonna be the first Black Scottish man to take a cold shower in the Scandinavia. I'm like, no way, man. And this old 70-year-old lady comes out of the water and she's like, are you going in, son? I was like, this way. If she can do it, I can do it. Then I ended up going to the water. It was so cold. It was like 1 degree from what I could remember. But when I came out, like my body was warm and just some sort of energy sparked within me, and was super awake. When I had some soup and I went back to the studio. It's just something that happened to my body, and that was so warm, and I had these ideas. It's crazy, when you think about what you were saying there is interesting.
Yeah, it's probably a similar thing. Synapses firing in different directions in response to all this new stimulation. A lot that in Dundee. I mean, there's always people in the sea, in the middle. Like I went down there to the beach a couple of weeks ago. There was a group of older ladies. They were all in the sea, and I was just thinking, it was cold with my coat on. You know what I
mean? No way.
No way I'm doing that. I have been in the sea in the winter and the summer, but in Dundee. But it's not really something I particularly enjoy. Running or cycling or something like that.
Yeah, it's different things that someone enjoys. So yeah, tell me, who is Monty Nero? Like, how did you get into art? Tell me your like childhood story. Everybody always has a story on how they ended up, because I've seen you draw at comic cons, and you're so fast and you're so focused. You just switch into your zone. It's quite interesting watching.
Yeah, I love drawing at comic cons. As a writer, I found that there was a lot of waiting in between, like talking to people or selling books. So I just thought like, well, if I draw a picture while I'm waiting, at least that's something to keep me busy.
Yeah.
But then people started buying the pictures. So now I sell more pictures than I do books. Anyway, the main thing is you're like, enjoying it, chatting to people, and I like meeting, comic fans and stuff, and you got a chance to chat to them while you're drawing a picture, and you can maybe get them to buy a book at the same time, or a comic that they wouldn't have otherwise have stopped to have a look at. So so I actually started off more as a writer, as an artist. When I was at school, I wanted to make comics, and I wasn't really very good. There was lots of people in my class that were like better at it than me. So I just practiced a lot because it was something I really wanted to do. And when I left school, I'd been practicing maybe for like 2 or 3 years at school. I'd made a few comics myself, in my summer holidays and things like that, sort of 6-page comics. And it really struck me how hard it was. So I signed up to this course that I saw in London, which was run by David Lloyd, who did V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic course. I went there for about a year, and basically every week he would give us a script, and then we'd have to draw the script, and then we'd come back the next week and he'd critique it for us. And he would always like rip it to shreds. he didn't spare your blushes or anything, but it was a really good education because you learned not just the basics of how to tell a story with comics, but also you just realized how bad you were at it and how many skills you had to learn to be good at it. Things like anatomy and perspective and composition and shading and lighting and color theory, all the things you need to learn to be a comic. And it's almost as well like you're a director of the script. You're making a little film, but you're sort of storyboarding it in comic form. You've got to make characters act and get all the emotion across. It's really, really skilled. So anybody that can draw comics, I'm always hugely respectful when I know how hard it is and how hard they've worked to be good at it. So I don't consider myself a great comic artist, but I can do the job, and I enjoy doing it. And I think the main strength is that I can get the story across in a really interesting way. Especially, what it's like if you're writing and drawing, you can do really interesting things with the captions and the balloons and the visuals together, and get some really nice fluid, kinetic, powerful storytelling. I did this David Lloyd course, and then I still wasn't good enough to get any work as a comic artist. So instead of going to art school, I applied to art school. I got into a couple. But the thing about art schools back then is they never let you do comics, and they kind of very much looked down on it. And so they don't teach you like anatomy or anything like that. They were much more kind of like, sort of expressive and experimental. And I really wanted to just learn anatomy and figure drawing and life drawing and draw people and all the sort of traditional things. So I decided to teach myself. So I got a part-time job, and then I taught myself how to do it. And it took about 2 years, I guess, from this time. But at this point, at the end of that 2 years, I must have been sort of trying or wanting to be a comic artist for about 6 years, because I started at school. So anyway, at the end of those 2 years, where I was just like, financing my own kind of studies, I was doing like 8 hours a day, like practicing drawing comics. I used to put a stopwatch on it. And I've got all these books upstairs that are just full of like drawing after drawing of anatomy or figure work or something.
It's a lot of passion.
Yeah, a lot of passion. Yeah, I really wanted to do it. So, and what I really liked about it, looking back, I liked the storytelling aspect of it, because obviously there's lots of ways you can be an artist, but I just like the storytelling. So after a couple of years, I started to get work. So I did work as a comic artist for all kinds of people. I did some Judge Dredd stuff. I did some Roy the Rovers, which is a football comic in the UK. All kinds of different things. And I did it for like about 3 years. And then I realized over that 3 years, it was like really badly paid, and B, all the comics I was working for kept going out of business, which is still the case now. I think the comics launch, and then within a year or two, they sort of go bust. And also it just wasn't what I was expecting. I was kind of expecting a lot more collaboration, and sort of like, you know, collaboration between the writer and the artist, and between the editor and the creative team, and, you know, just try and make something amazing, because I always want to make something really special. And I just got the sense that the editor didn't really care about the comic, and the writer didn't really care about the comic, because often I see the writer later on after I'd done the comic at like a Comic-Con or something. And I'd talk to them about the script, and they'd just be very dismissive of it, or say that they couldn't remember writing it or something. And I was just like, well, I spent a lot of time drawing that, you know. I was really into it, so I was really not like that creatively rewarded, and also not financially. It wasn't great. So I just thought, like, this isn't everything I was hoping it would be. So at that stage, I'd go down and I'd buy my comics from the local sort of supermarket or the local shop. And every time I'd go down there over the sort of years I was working in comics, the computer game section would get bigger and bigger and more exciting. And, you know, and the comic section would get smaller and smaller. And I thought, oh, this is like a message, right? So
it's a message for you to leave the industry. But I was thinking, you know, comic books were quite a huge thing back in the day, no?
Oh yeah, I mean, they were bigger back then than they are now, I guess, as far as like mainstream. But it was still very much the case. I mean, since the 60s, it's just been a gradual decline in sales numbers, and you know, titles, you know, cancelled, and so on and so forth. And people always find new ways to keep them going, you know, by combining titles or relaunching them. Or in the 90s, people started to just do like, everything would be like a new #1 in a foil bag with some sort of like holographic cover or something with 20, and people start doing variant covers, anything to sort of get the numbers up. So yeah, I mean, comics always finds a way to survive. But yeah, I just found that the sort of artwork I was doing, I would get paid like 10 times as much if I did it for a computer game company rather than comic book company. So I started doing concept design for computer game companies, and then that was, you know, very rewarding creatively and financially. And I got more and more into computer games. I got into doing the sort of 3D side of it, and the animation side, and like making the graphics, because originally I'd just do the designs and someone else would do that, but then I started to sort of do that myself as well. And then eventually I got into like being like the lead artist on like a game, or a sort of a department of a game. So in that case, you're sort of like kind of like, you know, designing and setting the style for the project, or the characters, or for the environments in the game. So and then I got into doing like managing teams of artists and management generally, and art direction and things like that. So I ended up doing some pretty cool computer games. Need for Speed, I worked on one of those, and
no way.
SSX, which is a snowboarding game, and some other stuff, multiplayer games. So after I'd done that for a while, I kind of like started to think, well, you know, this is all good, but what do I actually want to do with my life? You know what I mean? You start, once you sort
Asking
of
questions,
so I realized I really wanted to make a comic, and you know, comics are hard to make and not very financially rewarding. But I just thought, like, I don't care. I just really, really want to make a comic. So, and I want it to be. I didn't want to work for somebody else. I didn't want to get a job drawing, you know, the X-Men or Judge Dredd or anything. I wanted to very much just make my own comic, and have it be my story, my characters, my style, my sort of themes, and just like a personal kind of thing. So that's the sort of downside with computer games, is towards the end, the sort of teams I was working on, there'd be like 200 people working on a game. So even if you were, you know, being very creative on it, you couldn't in any sense say it was like your game, because you know, so many people would be involved in it. And then also increasingly there was a lot of focus testing, and a lot of marketing would be dictating like the direction of the characters and the designs you were doing. And I'd get frustrated because I'd feel like, you know, that we'd done better designs and they weren't getting used because, you know, people just wanted something that was exactly the same as a game that came out sort of 2 years ago or something. So yeah, it was frustrating from that point of view. So I just wanted to do something where I could say, like, this is my own thing. So I started drawing and writing my own comic, which was Death Sentence. Yeah.
It's liberating though. It's liberating because now
it
was creative control.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I really enjoyed doing it, but I realized that there was just too much for me to do on my own. You know what's involved with making a comic. You've got to be the marketing guy. You've got to organize all the practical stuff behind the scenes, all the printing and distribution. You've got to do all the, you know, writing, the lettering, the artwork. So I just realized it would basically not succeed unless I collaborated with a better artist than I was. So I was at a Comic Con and I met Mike Dowling. I saw his. We were both in like a line to show someone our sort of portfolio of artwork, and I saw his. He was ahead of me, and I just thought, Christ, this guy's brilliant. You know, really genius artist, much better than me. So I sort of started chatting to him. And I had a short story at that stage, and I sort of asked him if he would draw this short story. It was like a 3-page story. And he was too busy because he was working on all these, you know, big comic projects. And he was doing a comic with Frankie Boyle. He was like a comedian, sort of Glasgow. And he was doing a comic with him. So he was too busy to work on my stuff. So we kept in touch, and I kind of drew the short comic myself, and I showed it to him just to see how it turned out and stuff. And then, because Frankie Boyle's like, you know, a comedian and he's involved in all kinds of TV work, he just stopped sending Mike the scripts, even though he cleared his schedule to do a graphic novel. He just stopped sending the stuff through, and obviously Mike was really worried because you know, he needed the money from. He'd cleared his schedule, so he had all this window of a graphic novel where he wasn't getting any scripts through. So I just said, well, I've got this script for Jessica that I really want you to draw, and you know, I'll pay you to do it proper rate. So that's what we did, and he started drawing my comic instead of the Frankie Boyle thing. So that was really lucky for me because, you know, he just really brought it to life and made it a magical, you know, thing. And it came out initially we were self-publishing, and then very quickly it got kind of bought up by Mark Miller, who he was wanting to do a newsstand title called Clint at the time, and he started serializing my comic in that, which was really good because it was in sort of a you know, a showcase with like Dave Gibbons and work by Dave Gibbons and you know, other kind of top American artists, and also Mark's stuff. So that got lots of attention for the sort of comic. And then on the back of that, I sold it to Titan, who then started publishing it, you know, around the world and like collecting it as in sort of hardback books. And here we go, got like the first hardback book here.
Oh yeah, Death Sentence. I was gonna ask you about. You've got some really cool big titles. You know?
Yeah, and then it got also signed up by a French publisher.
Yeah.
In France. So, but I did a good deal with all these companies. I didn't just sell it to them. I gave them the rights to do certain things, and then I've still me and Mike still own it. We have majority share in the sort of comic. So it's the best of both worlds because you can still self-publish and keep control of what you're doing, and you still own it.
Yeah.
But you can also, have the benefit of a big publisher kind of selling it around the world and in bookshops and things like that.
It's quite interesting. You talked about ownership. It's always good to have something that you've cared about, you've nurtured and grown, and see it flourish as well. It makes you excited about what you're doing. I was quite interested in like the big titles and the big studios you work for. You've done work with Marvel, haven't you?
Yeah, on the X-Men and the Hulk.
Dang, how was that like? Like, I mean, you're talking about how it was to get into the industry at the time and getting work. How did you end up doing that? Like, how did you get in that moment?
Yeah, well, I didn't try. It just happened when Death Sentence was published by Titan.
Yeah.
There was a lot of publicity about it, and that kind of triggered just a lot of people getting in touch with me. So a lot of film studios and TV studios got in touch with me. They just sort of see the kind of stories about the comic in the Hollywood Reporter or in, I don't know, various American sort of websites and magazines, I suppose. And then, so I just get emails from people, through my website or through my LinkedIn profile or something. So I got quite a few from film companies and things. And then also I started getting messages from a couple of editors at Marvel. And they just said they wanted to read the comic. So I sent them the comic when they read it, and they really liked it. And then they said, "Oh, do you want to pitch some ideas for this thing that we're doing?" I think the first thing I pitched was an Iron Man sort of comic. I didn't get that one. And then the second thing was an X-Man thing. So I got that one. So I wrote that, and then it was just it was good. It was it was interesting. I think the key thing was it was very fast. Everything happened very fast, which I liked. So like as soon as they said, "Oh, have you got an idea for this?" I'd like send an idea over the next day, and then they'd get back to me the day after that, and then like 2 days later they'd want the script. So the whole sort of thing would happen very fast, which was exciting. But then it was quite interesting when I started to get the checks, and they were very good at paying. They paid quickly, and they paid royalties based on the sales. I think twice I got royalties initially off the initial publication, and then later on I got royalties off when it was collected into a book. So they were very good at paying, but I didn't get any more money from doing the X-Men or the Hulk than I get off doing like a page of Death Sentence. So if you like per page or per amount of money, it worked out that I was, earning just as good money doing my own comic. So I appreciate that. Like, there's a really big sort of pay scale at Marvel or DC. So like, if there's somebody new like me that they've just sort of given some work, I'll get like the lowest rate that they do. But someone like Michael Bendis, he'll be getting like 200 times like what I'll get, because he's like a big star, big name sort of thing, key kind of like cornerstone of their whole universe. So there is a scale, and if you want, you can sort of stay there pitching ideas and working your way up through the pay scale. But at the same time, I really like making my own comics. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I get like creatively and financially rewarded, fairly for it, and that's really my whole goal in life, is just to make my own stuff. So I'm always happy to, if someone from Marvel or DC got in touch with me and said, do you want to write something, then I would be happy to send them an idea or something. But I was never going to be one of these people that's like constantly pitching ideas at them and like, because I really want to be a Marvel writer or a DC writer or something. I'm much more interested in spending that time like just working on my own stuff and different kind of books and graphic novels in the death sentence universe and that kind of stuff.
I think it's the creative freedom. Like even when you think about the first time why you wanted to do it is because you wanted to do your own comic books, and sometimes it's great to collaborate with big studios, other people. But when you have that sort of creative control over your ideas, your characters, all these concepts you're coming with, your script, it just freeing, you know. And once you don't have that, you can work for like 10 years and you're like, what the hell am I doing with my life? You know, working on something else that you know even partially connected to. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Yeah, sorry.
Well, what about you? How did you get into it? I'm interested in your story.
Yeah, I mean, with comic books, because I'm a film director, so you can tell I've already had this filmmaking. When you talk about being an artist in comic books and sort of drawing these panels and characters, it's the same concept for me. When I'm doing a film, I write a script and then do storyboards that go with the script that I've written. More especially if it's like scenes that are quite complex to shoot, especially if it's like an action scene, something that involves so much work that we need to stay on set for the whole day. So I need to storyboard that really quickly. So with comic books, it's just something I've always loved living in Congo back home. I saw we didn't even have comic book shops. You could go in someone's house and find like a Batman comic that somehow from America or the UK ended up in Africa. And then you'll be like 10 kids sharing one comic, you know? So when I first saw Batman and Spider-Man, I was like, this is so cool, you know? And you know, when you're growing up in Congo, you're like, me, I was thinking that maybe Congo is the only country in the world. I didn't even think there was a bigger world out there of different people, you know? So when I started seeing the comic books, I really wanted to do it. And I used to remember I used to draw and watch a lot of TV to try and sort of recreate what I'd seen on TV on paper. But
Yeah.
obviously, to trouble for watching a lot of Spider-Man animation. My mom was like, Etian, homework time. You can't be drawing and watching TV all the time. So every time she went to work, I'll pull my head. We would have this broken 80s TV at the back of our house where I could
Yeah.
get my brothers and sisters to lie in the grass, and then I'll pull my head through the back, start acting out stuff that I've seen like on Spider-Man, all this action, it's stunts and stuff like it's quite hilarious. But when I got to Scotland 10 years ago, I felt like there's a story of my upbringing that I felt like I really wanted to tell in the comic book world. And I didn't know
Yeah.
anyone in the community here. And luckily, I go lucky. I do love the community here. When I stepped in, everybody
Yeah.
was welcoming. Everybody was pointing me in this direction. You can come to this Comic Con. This is what you can do. Everybody giving me advice. It's love the community, and I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing without the community here. So, and that's how I ended up here. So, I've
Great.
just been doing comic books for 3 years, but I've always wanted to do them like 10 years ago, but I just didn't know where to start and the right story. And when Black Panther came out and I went to see it in the cinema, I was like, I think I need to link Scotland and Africa in a comic book.
Yeah.
And that's how it came to be.
Wow, that's superb, man. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the community, the Comic Con community, I love going to Comic Cons and just very accepting and welcoming of, all kinds of people. And yeah, really good vibe, very supportive of each. And yeah, it's been great to see your comic. I mean, you've done a really good job. It's I can tell, just by the way you talk about it when you're at the cons, it's a real passion and you're deeply involved in it for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And that transmits itself to the readers, and you can see the kind of readers and the people at the cons getting excited by what you're doing and the comic that you're selling to them. So yeah, it's good to see.
I've been connecting with a lot of creatives, writers, and people into the community, and everybody's just been supportive. I suppose, do you think it's always been the same? Like for you when you're getting started, did you think it was easier for you to sort of get into the industry and start creating stuff?
I think it's always been a very informal, kind of friendly vibe at Comic Cons.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it's better now. There's more cons, and there's more of a sort of fan community. I like the whole. I mean, I'm all about comics. I love comics, and I only really go to Comic Cons where the focus is on comics, not on sort of films and TV so much
Yeah.
because the comics that I'm interested in. But I love the whole cosplay kind of community and the whole kind of excitement that brings. You know, all the kids and the sort of dressing up and the families and the competitions and stuff. Um, I know some comic people get quite annoyed about cosplay and that sort of side of things, but I really love it. I think it adds a lot of
Yeah, it adds depth to it. Yeah.
yeah, it adds a lot of excitement. I think it adds a lot of numbers to the sort of cons. Yeah, I've always found it just to be a great part of the experience. And
Yeah.
that's certainly grown a lot in the time I've been going to cons. You know, it's got bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
And in really any sort of I like going to Scottish cons.
Yeah.
Um, just because I find they're as you know, as good as anything you can find elsewhere, and they're a lot handier for me to get to. You know, sort of I can get there back in a day, and I don't have to stay overnight and stuff. Um, so yeah, they're you go to some like con and some sort of out of the way place in Scotland, and you think like, oh, you know, is there going to be any like even like 6 years ago, you'd have thought, are there going to be any comic fans here? Because you know,
Yeah.
this is a really out of the way place. And then it'll be absolutely mobbed, you know, like thousands and thousands of people that are into it and excited and you know, want to see the comics and see what's going on and get a picture and get a photo and dress up and you know, just have a nice day out. It's really good to see.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the reason why I like cosplay as well, is like people become fans of these characters that us, the creators and writers, create. They're
Yeah,
just expressing how they feel and how these characters empower them. And if you take that away from people who come to Comic Cons, then what's the
yeah.
point, you know? It's
Exactly. And also, it's very creative. Like the creativity and a skill that goes into making a lot of the costumes is incredible.
yeah.
Um,
They
I know I couldn't do it a lot of the time.
Yeah, most of the kids that speak to me like on the Comic Con, I'm like, did you build that? It's like yesterday in the back of my house. I'm like, that's super cool. You know,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah, it's great.
So like, tell me, I've noticed that I went to your website. Obviously, I was just kind of getting to know you more better because I've been meeting you a couple of times. I've noticed that you do a few lectures in universities. So how is it important
Oh
for you
yeah,
to share your knowledge with students? Like, what do you normally do at universities?
yeah. I've done mainly stuff on writing, like on writing comics and how to make comics. You know, how to make a living out of it. I suppose as well. It's quite
Yeah.
important. Um, So yeah, I guess I got into that more before COVID times. During COVID times, obviously everything shut down, and then after that, I'm just like very focused on things. I can't be doing anything that's not, you know, focused on creating more of my own comics and also the financial aspect as well. Whenever I would go and do like a lecture at a university or something, even though they would pay me, it would be I would lose money that day because you know I wasn't making as much as I would make if I was sitting at home making my own comics and selling my own comics. Yeah, I've just since COVID, I've just been focusing on things that are like my core things that I love to do. So that's basically just making my own comics. That's what I've been really focused on. And as a result, I've got like lots of stuff coming out this year because I've been very busy, you know, working on you know, different kinds of death sentence stories and stuff.
Yeah. Do you think your life in general with your family, your daughter, you know, your family, do you think that translates into your stories? Do you think that you
Yeah.
that as a basis of inspiration, would you say?
Um, yeah, sometimes. I think definitely one of the X-Men stories that I wrote, the most recent one I did, that was very much basically stars my daughter
Mhm.
and also my sister. So it's like an aunt and her niece are in New York, and they kind of you know, get attacked by the Mole Men and various different other sort of Marvel villains, and then the X-Men kind of they're there as the X-Men sort of fight these characters, and they get to meet the X-Men and all this kind of stuff. And it's a story called Why I Love the X-Men.
Oh,
So it was basically about A, what I love about the X-Men, and B, just getting my daughter and her kind of excitement and sense of wonder into the story. So I think that's something that I really like to see in superhero comics, is just I like to see a sense of kind of like a real three-dimensional person, like each character. It shouldn't just be like powers with like a name and like a couple of characteristics. You want an actual sense that they're a real person with these incredible abilities and how that would work. So
yeah.
that's one. Second thing I always try and do is like I want to get a real sense of like how their powers work and how it feels to have those powers.
Yeah.
So I like to cross. But thirdly, I like to get over like a real sense of wonder and magic at the fact that these amazing characters exist and how they would affect the world and how people would be, how people would respond to them. So yeah, I was really pleased with that story because it got all those elements into it. And also it made my daughter like a part of the Marvel universe. So if you sort of go onto these Marvel Wikipedia pages and stuff, obviously she's a really, really, really incredibly minor part. She's just like a supporting character in a kind of minor story, but
Yeah.
she is listed as like part of the Marvel universe, and that was pretty cool. I was really pleased with that, and she was very pleased with it, and like got her a lot of kudos at school. Everyone suddenly thought it was really cool. So I was as I wrote the story, I was convinced that they would get me to change the name
Yeah.
of the character, because they were like, I think they've got some kind of rule that you're not supposed to base characters on real people, which is understandable. But in this case, I managed to sort of like sneak it through, so that was good.
Yeah, and I think you've talked about characters, how you develop your characters and how it's not just about superpowers and a few characteristics, just you want depth to their story, who they're more relatable and grounded characters are the ones I do love actually. Because I mean, when you read this, there's a lot of superhero stories, and if there's no backstory, there's really good and something that makes you relate to the character.
Yeah,
I feel like it's lacking that human element, to
yeah,
the story.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's what I liked about your comic when I read it. Is, it had that element to it, and
Yeah.
also it had an original kind of viewpoint, an original angle, which was obviously personal to you.
Yeah.
So that's what I also try and do that in my comics. I want like an original kind of take on things. It's one of the main questions I ask when I'm writing a scene, is like, how can I do this scene
Mm-hmm.
in an original way? So that's what I'm always trying to do with Death Sentence generally. So it's interesting to see.
You've done work on 2000 AD. What was that like? It's a huge one.
Yeah, I love 2000 AD. I mean, 2000 AD was the main comic I read when I was little,
Yeah.
uh, younger, and yeah, so really exciting to just meet the writers and artists, let alone work with them or draw one of their strips or something. Yeah, it's very thrilling. I was excited about that as anything. I mean, 2000 AD pays even worse than American comics. It
Yeah.
pays really, but yeah, as far as like something I was glad that I did, it's right up there.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I've written something and like a great artist like Simon Fraser drew one of my scripts. Um, it's just really, really good to see. I think the last thing I did for 2000 AD, I think I wrote and drew it. I
Yeah.
think I did both.
Yeah.
Uh, and I realized doing that because what I was trying to do with that one, I'd sort of sold some stories to 2000 AD, which were very much like get your foot in the door type stories, and their kind of stories, the sort of stories they want, right?
Yeah.
And I tried in the last one to make it more like my kind of story that they would then publish, sort of thing, and that didn't really work. I just realized in doing that 2000 AD has a very particular kind of style and
Mm.
expectation of stories, and
Mhm.
also a format, like the pace of them and stuff, because it's like, episodic 6-part stories. And I wanted to do something very different with a, unique kind of feel. I love science fiction, but even the sort of science fiction that I want to do, it's very kind of, it's got a very different feel to like the 2000 AD stuff.
Mhm.
So I just realized that there was no real way to marry these two things together. And also, if I've got an idea for a story, then it's really good. I'm just going to make a lot more money out of it publishing it myself
Yeah.
than if I sold it to 2000 AD.
Yeah.
So yeah, so from all kinds of angles, I just thought like I need to just do my own stuff. I need to concentrate on my own stuff more, and that's what I've been doing ever since. Yeah.
And I can tell for me, even just from my experience knowing other creators, I feel like indie comic books and graphic novels are like on the rise. Like there's a
Mm.
lot of people doing so well. And I think I went to Thought Bubble for the first time last year. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just went there. I was like, who's this? What's this? What is this? Everybody's just got these titles and people got some cool work. I saw some amazing art and I connected
Yeah.
with really cool creatives. It was just amazing seeing all the creators, especially like comic book creators and writers, everybody in one room and Carlist. It was amazing. It's a good vibe.
Yeah.
You've been part of it. Have you been to the Thought Bubble?
Yeah. I've been a few times down as a guest, and a couple of times before that, just as like a punter. And yeah, really, it's always like a fantastic energy, isn't there, about the room and the whole weekend. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So, like, you've been doing this long. Every time I meet you or other people who have been doing it longer, I'm just curious, like, what keeps you motivated? Like, what?
Mm.
How do you feel motivated every morning for all these years? And you wake up, you're like, I got this story. Like, how do you keep your mind, focused on it, doing it, and loving it, and constantly staying in there? Because a lot of young people who like comic book community, some are afraid to start because they don't know if it's something they want to do or if they, they're not motivated enough. Like, how do you keep on going?
Yeah, I think the only reason to make comics is if you really, really, really love comics,
Yeah.
above kind of all other kind of forms of art or storytelling. Um, I think if you don't have that love and that passion for it, I think it's very, very difficult, A, to sort of create the comic, but B, to just kind of make it financially viable. You have to put so much work in to sort of get it to work, and then not just get it to work, but then to sustain that over like decades. It's like you can only do it if it's just the one thing you want to do in the world. um I was thinking about this a couple of days ago because I actually had a terrible experience driving back from London earlier this week, where I was in a motorway crash,
Oh,
and
are you
I was
okay? Everything okay?
okay. I've got a bad back, but I'm essentially fine. But the car was destroyed. It was a write-off.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, I was doing 60 down the motorway in the 60 zone because it's a smart motorway, and some idiot was ignoring the speed limit, doing about 80, and they just crashed into the back of me, sent me spinning across the motorway, and wrecked my car. And I thought I was going to die. Right, I literally thought I was going to die. I thought I hit me twice, so I thought I was going to die when he hit me the first time, and I'm like fighting to control the car and keep it facing straight. And then I definitely thought I was going to die when he hit me the second time. And he went spinning around the outside of me, and we both ended up spinning across the motorway and ending up kind of near the hard shoulder, which was lucky because it meant other vehicles behind could go round us.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was really like I literally thought I was going to die while I was being hit by this idiot in this car. So and on the after I'd sorted out all the police and insurance and everything at the roadside, I was making my way back up to Scotland, and I was obviously thinking like I literally could not, I might not be here today. I might never have
Yeah.
add these days to live, and you're thinking like, well, what do I want to do with my life? You know, what would my life have been like if it had ended like this morning, and what do I want to do with the kind of time that I've got left? And it was like really just clear running through my head. You know, I just want to do what I'm doing. I want to make comics. I want to keep making my comics. It wasn't no change in ambition or anything. I just want to make more of my own comics and keep publishing my own comics and write and draw. I've written a novel, death novel. So I've been working on that for many years because obviously main focus has always been the comics. But finally got the novel into a kind of stage where I think like, right, I'm ready to kind of publish that this year. So I'm going to bring that out this year, the novel, see how that goes. I'm not sure if anybody really necessarily wants a novel from me, but I'm something I want to do and try. I'm very motivated by, I think you've got to listen to your creative, you know, voice and make sure that you're doing, you know, the projects that really kind of speak to you emotionally. It's very important to do that because otherwise I think you don't have the passion and the vision to sort of see it through and to get the comic out there and to get people excited about it and to keep going when it gets tough or when something goes wrong. You know, either financially or practically, you know, things can go wrong and you're sort of like thinking, oh, this is really hard. How do I keep going? I remember during COVID, you know, everything just ground to a halt, and UPS lost like about £2,000 worth of my comics, and they literally didn't know where they were, and it took 2 months for them to find them. And I was obviously thinking, oh Jesus, I've lost all this money, and you know, obviously I need to sell those comics to get the money back to, you know, carry on making the comics. So it was very, very stressful. And I was also, when they found them, I was like, well, they must be damaged or waterlogged or something. They've been outside for ages, and you were thinking like, oh, for God's sake, you know, this is a nightmare. Luckily, they packed them up really well, so they weren't in any way damaged. And once they found them, 2 months, they eventually sent them to the right place where they were supposed to be, which is the warehouse that I've got in America that does all the sort of American distribution. So, but it was just like, you know, so hard to keep. Often you meet things like that if you're working. I guess if you're somebody that's working for other companies, I know a lot of cases where those companies have gone bust, and then people haven't been paid for their work, and they're, you know, completely screwed on their sort of, you know, mortgage or their rent or whatever. So it's a very hard business, and I don't think you can do it or keep going in it unless you really love it. On top of that, what I've probably learned to do, you know, since I started doing Death Sentence 10 years ago, what I've learned to do is to take my kind of passions and my emotions and things I care about, and then turn it into something that's actually going to sell. Because there's no point, you know, making something and putting your soul into it and your heart into it, and then it just dies a death, and no one buys it or they don't like it, and you lose all your money, right? So that's not a good experience, you know. I mean, you can do that once, I think, and kind of get like your passion project out there and say, okay, well, I lost loads of money, but at least it's out there. But if you want to keep making comics and keep going, you have to have something that people are buying and that's something that's selling. So that way you can just keep on doing it. So like having the skill and the knowledge to sort of tell a good story and to understand all the things that make a great comic, and then to also have the skill and the knowledge to how to sort of market it and how to sort of get it out to people, and how to sort of not get ripped off by publishers when sort of come to you with deals and things. All that kind of stuff it's a hell of a complicated business. It really is. So I literally anybody that is getting a comic out there and is passionate about their stuff has my total respect. You know, that's my starting position with anybody that I see making a comic. I'm just like, wow, because I know how hard it is and I know how much work they put into it, and I'm always really interested to see what they're doing. And you just really hope that it's like, you know, good and original and personal and passionate. Those are all the things that tend to cut through and
Yeah.
get successful ongoing titles.
You know, I can just say that from everything you've said, that love for what you're doing is very important, you know, to
Yeah.
drive you and keep you going. And the experience you just had coming from England, oh my God.
Mm.
You when you told me that, I was just like in the moment, I was like, wow. And then now you just felt like you want to just keep creating. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to know, like, through your whole career, I mean, there'll be a lot of young people that watch this and they're maybe not motivated. What would you say to somebody who wants to do what you're doing, but they are too afraid to even get, something started?
Yeah, I think the most powerful force you have, and it's something I try and tap into now, is naivety. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people say, like, "Oh, I don't know something. I don't know anything about, you know, films or books or comics. Therefore, I can't make it because I don't know enough about it." And I think when I was younger, what kind of like powered me through was just this overwhelming sense of naivety and like almost like an ignorance about how hard it was going to be, or
Yeah.
how how uh, how how hard it is to get, how easy it is to get screwed over in the comic industry as well. So you just don't know about these things and you don't care. And I think that's brilliant because it means you've just got this excitement and this positivity and this enthusiasm. And you think like, remember when I was like, in my teens, I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna make a comic and it's gonna be really cool and it's gonna sell really well, and then like we're all gonna be rich and famous and blah blah blah. Um, and it's not like that at all. It's not how it worked out at all. But I think the fact that I felt that um, meant that I was always very positive and excited about my work and what I was doing, and positive about the future, and optimistic. And I think as you get older and you sort of things go wrong, and certain things don't work out, which is the same with everybody's life, no matter what field they're working in. You only hear about other people's successes, right? You never hear about the things that went completely wrong and never made it, because obviously it has no publicity. So you only see the successes. All those people had failures and they had things that didn't work out, and things that went wrong, and they kept going, and then they didn't give up, and they were still optimistic, and they were still passionate, and they were still excited about what they were doing, and then they eventually made it.
Yeah.
So it's very important, I think, and I still make a conscious effort to try and tap into this today, is to um, be excited, be optimistic, be naive, dream big, try anything. If something's not been done, it doesn't mean that it can't be done. You might be the first person to do it, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So always just go for it, back yourself, and just be as passionate and creative as you can. Um, you've got to use that. I mean, that's all a tool to get the work done. You've got to do the work. You've got to create the stuff. It's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of writing or art to make when you make comics. So, you've got to focus on it. But that excitement and that enthusiasm is the sort of engine or the fuel, really, that kind of gets you through. So, yeah, I think that's the key to any kind of creative endeavor, really.
Definitely. Look,
Mm.
we met a couple times and I was always like keen to kind of like sit down and have a conversation about your career, because obviously when I look at what you do and how you draw and the sort of passion and the focus you had, I've always find you fascinating. And even just hearing your story, it's just kind of made, yeah, I feel like we finally had a conversation. It's like there's a cup of tea, you have a cup of tea, and we're having this conversation should have had in a long time. So I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I feel extra motivated this morning, to go and keep creating. Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm interested in like what you think about these things because obviously, you're very creative and you've, done very well with
Mhm.
your film, creating your comics. So, what do you think about these subjects that you've asked me? What's your take on it?
I mean, like with self-motivation and everything, because obviously I've always, like, for example, with my story, my comic book, I've always had these stories growing up that I never had a chance to. So me being away from home and being in Scotland, it's a huge
Mm,
opportunity, first of all, right? Like every morning I wake up, I'm super grateful for life and me being here in the moment. And I've always asked myself, what keeps me excited, uh,
mhm.
creating stories, coming up with these characters that I care about, and I feel like my heart and soul is in there. And I'm sort of communicating this story with the world so that I can make or inspire the world and make it better. So that has always been my passion and putting my life in it. I don't know if you checked out the first page of Beats of War. The queen mother of the planet is my mom. I lost growing up. I wanted to keep her alive in the story because she passed away when I was really young. I was like, growing up, I was
Mm,
like, I feel like, when you're that kid who feel like they didn't get a chance to have that relationship with their parent and you've always had
Yeah.
this passion and anger within you. And for a moment, when I just put her in the comic books, I feel like, okay, you know what? I can just have these conversations and make her super powerful, badass, and she'll still exist in my own world. And for a moment, I felt free. So it's really as personal, it goes deep for me. And that's so passionate and, real story and love and emotion that I put in the stories keep me motivated. Because if I don't have that, I'll probably be myself, so that's how I stay motivated. And also just finding the right people to work with, like there's some points that you mentioned about artists not being paid well or people in the industry screwing people up. Every time I work with people, I'm like, you know what? I know this person, this is the fee they pay you, but if you do a good job, I respect the art. I respect everybody who writes, who draws,
Mm.
does something. So I appreciate every sort of detail that is added to my creative work through the collaborations. So I like to pay everybody I work with really well so that they're comfortable doing it. So that because when someone is not comfortable, their passion doesn't come out. And it's like, okay, you're paying me 20 quid to do this really quick, even appreciating the amount of work that these guys have been crafting for over the years, so people think
Yeah.
because you're an artist and you're there drawing, I can't pay you 20 quid for that picture. I mean, like, man, you're not paying for that 10 minutes. You're paying for the last 10 years. This person has been
Yeah.
crafting, and even you've been doing it longer. So it's just me appreciating the art, just basing my life experiences to keep myself motivated and knowing that if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And there's a child somewhere in Africa, in Congo, where I come from, who would love to be in the position I'm in right now. So since I'm here and I got the opportunity, I need to make the best of it, and just keep going, So that's kind of like the way I am with it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting because I think that comes across because obviously we've chatted at Comic Cons and stuff, and I think that's why I like you is because that energy and that optimism
Yeah.
uh, comes across, and obviously I guess I feel a similar way. So we've got that in common. So yeah, it's why it's always fun when you're next to me at a Comic Con. It's always a fun day because I know we can a little chat and enjoy the same kind of energy with the people coming through. So it's great to see.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. It's same right back at you. And every day I see someone create something different and new and fresh. I'm inspired and even hearing your story. And like that's just that one moment. I've had these moments in life where my life could have just slipped away. And
Mm,
I made a promise to myself that if I'm doing something and do something I'm passionate about, that I love, that I'm gonna put 110%. When you mentioned the writer who came to see you on Comic Con and they had written this, they were like, oh, I don't remember, wrote that. Like, where's the passion? Like, what's the whole point of doing it? Like why would you even say that? So I guess that's why some of the stuff I'm creating is really personal to me. So I can care about the story from the script to the art because I come from a filmmaking background. So when I work with an artist, I've got this sort of eye for panels and how I'm thinking of how they could be, right? So I get involved in that sense, and then they go and do their own thing. So I like to, it's like sort of like cinematography in filmmaking, right? So I already have it in my head, go out and take photographs, think about scenarios, do sketches for them. So they get all this information based on my script and go and make it better. And you can see lighting and depth in the images. So I pay a lot of attention to the detail because I'm very passionate about it, but I enjoy the whole process. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's really exciting when you're working on a comic with someone and you see the pages come in,
Yeah.
and like it's if it's like a good artist, it like it's everything that you put into the script, but then there's like more stuff that you hadn't even thought of, and done it in such a way that makes it better,
Yeah.
and it's really, really exciting. I've been very lucky with the artists that I've employed on Death Sentence. You know, Mike Dowling, just incredible kind of visual storyteller and very kind of atmospheric artwork, and thoughtful, intelligent guy. You know, a much better comic artist than I am. And now he's doing, you know, loads of work for Marvel and very busy, you know, with American comics. And then Martin Simmons, who's like a more of a painter.
Yeah.
Again, like incredibly gifted and like very fast, and like I would look at his painted pages and I would literally like, you know, because I paint the covers, so you know I know how to paint. But I would like look at his stuff. I'd be like, I don't know how he did this. This is just like incredible. It would blow my mind, and just really thrilling to think, you know, that you're creating something together, and then their energy fires your energy, and your energy fires their energy, and just got a really good vibe.
Yeah.
And you know, they both became good friends, and we still chat on the phone all the time. You know, I chat to them both, you know, in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's just great. I think that's the way to do it. Is you're creating something. It's just the two of you. It's very personal to you, and then you know, it's like a almost like a friendship as well as a creative. I think that's the ideal way to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't all circumstances. I mean, you can't always do that, but I think that's one of the advantages of making your own comic is you can actually spend that extra time on it
Yeah.
to exactly the way you both want it to be, and it's like a labor of love.
Yeah.
Uh, Certainly with American, well, with you know the big publishers, they've got a schedule. The comic has to be out on this day, so whatever is done by this point in time is what's going to get printed. So, and at that stage, you know, I know from experience, things a lot of people can be very unhappy with
Yeah.
how it turned out, but they've just got to make the best of it, and they might change some lettering to try and sort of explain away something that's not quite working, and it all sometimes feels a bit, you know, stilted or a bit sort of confusing when you read it because something hasn't quite worked.
Yeah.
But with our comics and with yours as well, because I've read Beats of War. Yeah, with our comics, we always try to spend that extra time just polishing everything so it's perfect and exactly the way we want it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what selling. I think that's the key to it. Is obviously, you know, we had a success in the beginning and it sold well, but it's still selling now. It sells more now than ever. So I think because we took the time to take that quality with it, and give our personality into it. I think that's why it still sells and why people when they see it, loads of people have I'll do another campaign in a couple of months, a sort of online crowdfunding campaign, and loads of people will see it for the first time, and it'll be like really exciting to them, and they'll get really thrilled and they get really kind of like sort of emails sort of saying how much they enjoyed it and love the comic and they can't believe they never read it before and stuff. And I think that all comes from just taking that extra time to make it really special. And we could have done a very similar job, but not just spend that extra 5%, and no one would be buying it now. It would just be a comic that came out and did quite well and then people forgot about it. So I
Yeah.
think that's essential, really.
And that's the beautiful thing about creating timeless stuff. If you invest that time, it becomes timeless. It's going to be forever there. And it's interesting because the comic book community and people who consume this content as well, the fans can tell if you spend a good time to make it that masterpiece that that sort of story or graphic novel comic book that goes through time. You know, I mean, imagine the last time you did that, and it's still going up to these days because of
Yeah.
what you put into it. So, which is always important. It's
How's your film doing? Um,
so my film is coming out July this year, and I'm gonna be going on tour. So that's gonna come out independent. So I'm distributing this independent through my company. So I've got screenings in Dundee. So I'll be letting you know at DCA. So
oh, good. Good.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll come to that because
yeah, definitely.
I'd love to see it at the DCA.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. It's great. Like I've been asking people to sign up, and I've had over 1,000 sign-ups. So people want to see the movie, both in Glasgow, Dundee, Aberdeen. So I'm doing it independently, putting it out there. And like
Also,
you said, comic books have helped me make my movie because obviously they've sort of funded my film, and that's the beautiful thing about it. You know, so just kind of doing one thing and it's supporting the other,
mm,
and having that balance. So yeah, I'm very excited. And when I'm in Dundee, definitely I'm gonna let you know so you can come down and see it.
it must be much harder to make a film than a comic because there's so much more kind of people that need to be involved, and I guess it's more expensive as well. I mean, how do you find the two things?
Uh, the film is more expensive. I would say that my comic book is maybe my film is about maybe 100 times expensive than the comic book, like one issue. But it's like my film has over 100 people involved, right? And was directing, you know, what the film had a co-writer, but we've literally finished everything. It's took me 24 months. I've been on it since, from
Yeah,
production, shooting, editing, you know, sound design, and then going back to color grading. It's been an insane journey. But when you see it, when you sit in the cinema and you're testing it, and you can hear the 5.1 mix for the cinema, it's color graded, and you enjoying those 2 hours, you're like,
yeah,
it's a moment. It's hard to explain how I feel. It's
yeah,
exciting. It's exciting.
yeah. Incredible. I mean, yeah, I think making a film is much harder than making a comic. So it's very impressive. Very impressive. I can't wait to see it, man.
Yeah, thank you. I will invite you, and yeah, I don't want to take you so much of your time. I know you're very busy, man,
Yeah,
but thank you so much for speaking with me. Let me know if you want to come to the screening in Dundee. By the way, I can get you some tickets for you and the family.
yeah.
Yeah, perfect, perfect.